Developing things and creating new things has been always a passion for me. I guess it's somewhere in my genes or in my background. I love to create things, and I love to understand how people create beautiful things. Well, I guess it goes back to what Schumpeter said a long time ago. The market society is not about stability. The market society is about creative destruction. What happens when you're extremely successful is that you think that the world is not going to change, probably because you don't want the world to change. And you forget about the fact that the world changes, that there's creative destruction out there, and somebody's going to come out and challenge everything that you're doing. Incremental innovation is totally different from breakthrough innovation, two different animals, and you have to manage them very differently. So the startup corporation, it's a new way of managing in a sense. A mindset on the one hand, so it's about leadership, it's about culture, but it's also about how you organize your company, so you have a chance to do breakthrough innovation. Hello, my name is Tony Davila. Innovation is my passion. Tonight, you're gonna hate me and you're gonna love me. You're gonna hate me because no matter how successful you are, your company is at risk. Actually, the more successful you are, the more you're focusing on being efficient and better at what you're doing. And someone, somewhere, is working on an idea to put you out of business. You're gonna love me because we're gonna talk about the startup corporation. That's a way to address this challenge. Before we start, let me give you the distinction between what we call incremental and breakthrough innovation. Incremental innovation is getting better at what you do. That's a typical day in a corporation. Breakthrough innovation is about changing the rules of the game. That's a typical day at a startup company. My focus tonight is going to be on breakthrough innovation, because I believe that sooner or later, the success or the failure of your company depends on it. Incremental innovation will only get you so far. After years of study, what we found is that the biggest challenge that established companies faced is the following one. The better they are at incremental innovation, the harder it becomes for them to be good at breakthrough innovation. That's what we call the innovation paradox. Let me give you an example. Say that you are the manager of a 100-year-old hotel. Now, the innovation paradox tells you that you will probably be focusing a lot on getting nicer rooms, on getting better food. Now, the better you become at operations, the less likely you are to come up with breakthrough ideas such as Airbnb. And guess what? Airbnb is out there and is one of your main competitors. Now, tonight we're going to talk about the startup corporation, the way to beat the innovation paradox. It combines the best of two worlds. It's not about copying what startups do. It's about adapting their ideas and leverage them to your advantage. The startup corporation is possible. There are companies out there who are doing it. Think about Logitech, 3M, or Google. We've studied hundreds of companies all around the world in almost every single sector that you can think of. We've seen everything. We've seen successes, and we've seen failures. The red herring, the poster child of the media industry during the dot-com era in Silicon Valley. It was a magazine with more than 300 pages in each one of its issues. Every single startup in Silicon Valley wanted to be on those pages. 2 years later, it was gone, disappeared. We've also studied successes. Take Baidu. Baidu started as a copy of Yahoo. Now it's several times larger and much more successful than the company that inspired them. Or take Checkpoint. Checkpoint, a company that started with technology from the Israeli army, became a local startup, and today it's a global business headquartered in the US and leading the software security industry. So what do those companies do? What's so special about them? It all comes down to three words: inspiring, learning, and integrating. What is this? It's about generating ideas, refining them, finding the business model so the idea can make money for you, and once you've done this, bring it into your company. Now, that's easier said than done. So let's see how champions do it. Number one, inspiring. Now, what do you think startups do that corporations don't do? They are obsessed with looking at the outside. They're obsessed to understand what's going on around them. Look at established companies. They're so focused on the inside about what Department X is doing, about what Department Y is doing, that they forget about the outside. And guess what? Opportunities are outside of your company. And by the way, also dangers. Let me give you a little story. And let's go back to the time when there were no refrigerators in the world. People living in Boston, New York, guess where they were getting their ice from? They were getting it from lakes up in the north. There were companies that would cut the ice, transport it into the cities, and store. The idea was to reduce melting as much as possible. Then the refrigerator came about. What do you think those companies did? They just dismissed the refrigerators as noisy machines that were supplying artificial ice, nothing comparable to the pure natural ice. And refrigerators kept on improving. What happened? At some point, it became clear to everybody, even to these companies in the ice harvesting industry, that refrigerators were going to make them obsolete. And guess what those companies did? They kept on cutting, transporting, and storing ice. Actually, the biggest gains in productivity in that industry happened when it was clear to everybody, even to those companies, that their business was gone and was going to be replaced by their refrigerator. That's the innovation paradox. It killed them. So as a company, how do you inspire your people? You have to develop tools and processes for people to shift their attention to the outside. They have to focus on who are the important actors there, what are the actions, what opportunity spaces are they creating for us to come up with a breakthrough innovation. Let me give you an example. Olapic, it's a New York-based startup. The first idea was wedding pictures. Guests, they take pictures in weddings. The idea was that all the guests in a wedding would upload the pictures into a website, so every guest could share on those pictures. A great idea, people loved it, but it was a small business. So what did the founders do? Rather than giving up, they kept on looking at the outside to look for opportunities. And another opportunity came by. They went to an innovation competition, and there they teamed up with a newspaper from New York, the New York Post. The service they provided together with the New York Post was for users to upload their pictures on the website of the newspaper. That was, again, a very good idea. And a lot of newspapers around the world picked up on it and did exactly the same. But still, the business was way too small for their aspirations. So they kept on looking at the outside, and the opportunity came up with e-commerce. Now, what happens in e-commerce is that if you want to buy a product from a website and you see the catalog pictures, you might buy it or not. But if you also see pictures from regular people using the product, you're much more likely to buy the product. Now, that was the home run for the company. That's when the company started to grow really fast. Now, you never know when or where an idea is going to happen. And you don't need to have all the ideas. You can also attract ideas into your company. And that's what a lot of companies are doing. So they look for places in the world where there's a lot of ideas going on, where there's a lot of startups growing. A place can be, for instance, Silicon Valley. And you see large companies all having offices in that place of the world. Citibank has an office, Honda has an office. A lot of large companies are going there to pick up ideas and move them quickly inside of their company. Ideas don't come out of nowhere. There's a discovery path, and it's intentional. Let's move to learning. Learning is having the attitude of Olapic founders. An idea is not enough. You need to develop the idea, come up with a product or a service that is fully functional, and then you have to come up with a business model that is going to bring it to the market. Now, that's the learning stage. The learning stage is about discovery. Think about scientists. Think about explorers. They are constantly experimenting. They test their assumptions. Sometimes they are right, sometimes they are wrong. When they are right, they keep on the same path they were going. When they are wrong, they look for another path. And they keep on experimenting until they get to the solution. That's learning. Learning, it's about discovery. That goes against what we're taught about management. Management, it's about avoiding mistakes, not deviating from a plan. That's the wrong mindset for breakthrough innovation. For breakthrough innovation, there's going to be mistakes, and you're going to learn from those mistakes. So every prototype that you do, every business model that you test, it's about learning. Sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to succeed. Look at the evolution of almost any product and compare the initial prototype with the products that we've got today. Think about a PC mouse and think about the initial prototype, think about how they look now. There's been a lot of experimentation in there. There's been a lot of learning. Now, in order to do this, you must run at least part of your company as a startup company. Start by assigning independent budgets. One budget is going to be devoted to your existing business. That's incremental innovation. Another budget is going to be devoted to placing bets into the future. That's breakthrough innovation. A lot of companies are doing this. Intel, BMW, they all have two budgets, one for the business model today, one for future bets. Speaking of money and bets, let's talk about business models. Let me give you an example, Nespresso. Nespresso goes back to the 1960s. A technology developed in the university, Nestlé bought it. They were scared that it was going to compete against their soluble coffee. So it went into Nestlé, and the engineers started tweaking with it. And they moved it from being a very bad coffee into being a very good coffee. Now, at that point, they had to bring that product into the market. So if you're doing coffee by the cup, what's the logical way to go? Go to hotels, to bars, and restaurants. And that's exactly what Nespresso did. They went to hotels, bars, and restaurants. That's where people have coffee by the cup. It was too expensive. It was a failure. Now, their second idea, go to offices. Again, they tried it. It didn't work. And Nestlé was ready to shut down the operation, saying, this idea is going nowhere, until they found the sweet spot, which is go to the end consumer and position the idea as premium coffee. That's when Nespresso succeeded and created a huge market. Guys, creating markets, it's about learning faster and making smarter mistakes than your competitors. I cannot emphasize how important the learning process is, and you shouldn't end it too soon. Let's go back to 2008. At that time, social networks was dominated by a company called MySpace. Actually, News Corp bought the company for a ton of money, and they were right. Social networks was going to be a huge business. But they bought MySpace, and they stopped learning, and they focused on scaling up the idea. Now, the problem there was that somebody else was still in the learning phase and adapting social networks to the need of people. That company was called Facebook. And today, Facebook dominates social network, and MySpace is almost non-existent. So you might be wondering, how am I going to be able to compete with all this? Well, remember, inspiring, learning, and integrating. Integrating is good news for you. Why? Because established companies have a clear advantage over startups in terms of scaling up. They've got the resources, they've got the contacts. Let me give you an example. Logitech, the leader in the world in computer peripherals. They bought a company, a startup company, that had a great technology for remote controls. They bought it, put it through their retail channel, and in less than 1 year, they were leaders in the market, 33% market share ahead of Sony and Philips. Now, if you think how long it would have taken the startup to convince retailers to get that remote control in their shelves, it would have taken them 5-10 years. So integrating, what do we mean by this? Let's put it simply. In order to put a product or a service in the market, first of all, you have to find a space for it in your company. This is where you, as a manager, will be tested the most. This is where things get messy. Think about Philips. Philips has been doing light bulbs for decades. Some people in Philips have spent their lifetime working with light bulbs. And then suddenly, there's a new kid on the block. and the kid says, I can do 99% of the things that you do much better than you do. That kid is called LED technology. Now, if you spend all your lifetime doing light bulbs, how are you going to feel? You're going to feel threatened. So those people are going to fight against LED technology. If Philips had put the LED technology inside their light bulb division, probably Philips wouldn't be in that business today. Now, what they did was they put LED technology in a separate division. If your breakthrough innovation is similar to something that you already have, you can put it inside that business unit. But most often, your breakthrough innovation is going to be different enough that you have to put it either in a separate division or you have to come up with a spin-off company. One final thought before we leave. The startup corporation has capital, has contacts, has the resources. Now, their sweet spot is not the single product or the single service that startups come up with. The sweet spot is complex breakthrough innovation. Think about healthcare, think about energy, think about telecom, think about smart cities. That's the sweet spot for the startup corporation. Think of managed health. There, you have to put the medical records of every single person in a country available to every single person working in the healthcare sector. Now, that's a challenge. That's a lot of technologies, a lot of resources, a lot of organizations that have to be brought together for this breakthrough innovation to succeed. So, you can do breakthrough innovation. And actually for you, sky is the limit. Build your startup corporation. Think about those three words: inspiring, learning, integrating. Just remember, if you don't do it, somebody will. And then you know the rules of the game. Either eat lunch or be lunch.